Hi, and thanks for watching another instructional video for CSCI 1300. In this video, we will talk about how to manage a larger program by building function stubs to get the overall structure down before you really start dealing with implementation of functions and really figure out what the functions are going to be calculating or doing or performing what tasks or operations once you actually get into the nitty-gritty of the actual code. So say you have an idea. You have an idea of what you need to do, and you need to break it up into parts. So in this example, what we want to do is we want to generate a string for any number between 1 and 99. And we're going to do this by creating two functions. So what we're going to do is we're going to create two functions. And one will handle, so function 1 will handle digits between 1 to 9. And we will have another function for handling digits between 20 and 99. So let's see here. What we want to do is, say we have this idea, we can break this up into two functions. So let's do that. So when we talk about a stub basically means a blank function, a skeleton. You have the function declaration, you have the parameters that it needs or requires, and you also have the scope brackets all set up. So you can call that function and you can test a simple return value with you to make sure that when you chain your function calls together, they all work. Then you can go back and actually start doing things to actually develop the functions at that point once you have everything linked up correctly. So if we think about the first function, we want it to return a string. So that means that I should probably set it as a string function. And I'm going to call it digit name. Digit name, we're going to have this one handle some integer that will come in. And we want this to be preferred back in some form. So without going into this, I'm going to basically say that what I want to do is I want to check the digit, then print the string equivalent. Or actually, I don't want to print, I want to return that. And just to test this, I'm going to use a return, and I'm going to just pass in something. And this could be, you could think of this as 9, and if we wanted to do 90, we'd have to do that for a different function. So I've got a function that I can call in my main at this point. I'm now going to go in and I'm going to make another function here for doing the larger value. So if I wanted to print 99, I've got the 9 portion, but I need to print something for a value of 90. So what I could do is I could create another string function. I know I want it to return a string. And I'm going to call this the tens name. I'm going to pass in another integer. This one's going to be called number. And just like before, I'm going to leave myself a comment here saying that this is going to check the num, then return the string equivalent. So if 90 is entered, then we'll return 90 as a word. And in this example, I'm going to say mumble tea, and just like 90. So if this is 9, then this would be 90. And I can test this by kind of like checking them together. So say I have a string string digit, which will be equal to a function call to digit name. And we're going to pass it in some value here. So let's say that we have a, let's pass it in a value. Let's pass it in a direct value. Let's pass in 9. And of course, this is an example here, so it doesn't matter what we pass in. We do need to pass in some kind of integer. And we're going to have another string for the tens place. And we're going to set that equal to tens name. We're going to pass it a value of 90. And what we want to do is we want to create some output which should equal the other two. So at this point, you know, we're basically putting this stuff together, and at this point I'm starting to realize that I could probably create another function, another string function for putting it all together. So I could call this final output, and it's going to take in a string 1 and a string 2, and I will return some string output which will equal 1 plus 2. So I'm basically just taking what I did here and I'm going to move it up into a function instead. So we're creating a third function. So this is function 3. We realize we can break this up a little bit more efficiently. Instead of having a large cluttered main, we can kind of break these up into separate little pieces to do a particular task, like generating this, generating that, and then putting those things together and then returning that. So here what we want to do is we want to take the value from takes return from digit names and tens name, digit name and tens name, returns a single string. Okay, and here we're going to just return output, and the last thing we need to do is make sure that we call this function. So final output will be called by passing in digit and tens, and now what we can do is we can say that string output will equal that, and we've got that saved. So now what we can do is we can actually call this and print it. So let's print output and see what we get. So if we run the program now, this will be manage larger program, and we get mumble tea. And here, just to make things a little bit clearer, I'm going to add in a space when I add these together. And I'm going to print it one more time just to make it a little bit easier to understand. So we're taking mumble and mumbleT from these two functions, piecing them together in a third function, and then printing that here in the main. So all we're really doing in main is catching the return values from the functions that we just created, then calling another function to put all of that information together, and once that returns back, we just print the return value that we get as a result. That's all for dealing with larger programs. Thanks and happy coding.